I think that's
this is how we roll.
yeah.
Okay, I just started up the stream. There's the chat. Um, there's the recording software. There's the other chat. There's my intro. And there's Pamela. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Just type.
I'm almost done.
No, go ahead. We'll wait.
I can talk and type at
Can
once.
you?
It's a magical skill I have.
All right. Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay.
I have
Awesome.
my coffee now.
Oh. Hey, everybody. Say hi in the chat. And then I will say hello back. Man, that was so cool. Dr. David Grinspoon. I've admired him from afar, but actually getting a chance to talk to him on the Weekly Space Hangout was a total treat, and he was as intelligent and well spoken. And it was funny as we were setting up the show beforehand. Morgan and I were queuing up the list of stories, and he was like, "Yeah, no, I could totally talk about this, and I'd love to talk about that." And I was just like, "Yeah, but you've got only 30 minutes. You got a hard ending, and you've got to go." And he's like, "Oh yeah, right, of course." It was pretty funny. He had a lot of knowledge about a lot of things. Like, we were really just talking about the subject of his book, but I mean, we could talk about anything, and he would
Yeah,
be.
he's a fun guy to talk to
Yeah,
because you
absolutely.
can like bounce all over the place.
Yeah, totally. Um. Okay. Hello to Adam Synergy, Arnold Post, Ben Kalo, Bill Hunsicker, Bill K, Borit Klankar, Brian Cordova, Kai Housen, Citizen Gold, Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer's here. Just for an interesting side note, before we get any deeper into this, Cole Palmer works or used to work at Patreon. We were the first email that he sent out to back when he joined Patreon. I joined Patreon with Universe Today, but we hadn't on Astronomy Cast because we already had a donation system running through the university, but now we're no longer through the university, and so now we need a donation system, and Patreon is perfect. And so I described this to Cole as like this was his white whale, like he's been hunting Astronomy Cast to join Patreon for 3 years now. You did it, Cole. Hello to Daniel McCool, David Trogue, David Joseph Wesley, Dusty Reichwin, Fleming Thunberg, Gordon Dewis, Guido Bibra, H. Roll, Hilg Bjarkog, Holly Meyer, El Torture, James Haney, Jessica Feltz, John Drake, John Suffield, Larry Beckham, Lillian Brennan, Magnus Thamer Jensen, Michael Meyer, Nancy Graziano, Nichols of the Yard, Paul Disney, Peter Quinn, Peter Schultz, Arnstro, Renan C., Richard Clark, Sarah Culp, Sergio Botero, Sylvan Westby, Steve Heistand, Stir Fry Kitty, Susie Murph, our producer, of course, Thomas Traneker, William Vandebeek, and Zapfan. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Astronomy Cast.
Hello.
What were we going to discuss before we got into this? Oh, right. Cosmos. Hopefully, by the time
Yes.
you listen to this, you will have heard that they're going to be doing a marathon of the original Carl Sagan Cosmos on Monday on Twitch. I think they're going to do it twice. And then there's going to be, it's Science Week at Twitch. And so they're going to have a whole bunch of really cool stuff happening at Twitch. You're going to be in San Francisco hanging out at Twitch. I'm going to be at San Francisco hanging out on Twitch, although we're doing our live streams on different days. But there will be some overlap. So there you go. Tune into Twitch next week. They got lots of cool stuff going on. And my plan is to do this. This has been my dream for. This idea came into my head. Must have been 5 years ago, longer. I think I shared this idea with you about Cosmos, about doing a Riff Tracks
Yes.
version of Cosmos.
Yep.
Yeah, and didn't want to get in trouble with Andrewian and other people, but now now is the time. now we can hide in the noise of Twitch and do it. So I'm going to try and bring on guests and try and do like a live stream on Monday. So we'll see if I can figure this out. So stay tuned. Morgan says he'll come and talk about Saturn and Jupiter during that episode. So, we'll piece it together. Can I get your commitment for like one episode, maybe, Pamela? Maybe? Monday?
Yeah, not the one with the apple pie, because that one just always disturbs me.
Which part? Making apple pie? You don't like apple pie?
So, no, it's actually an entirely personal problem. You know the movie American Pie?
Mm-hmm.
I saw that movie. And then a few hours later, saw that episode of Cosmos for the first time. And those two abuses of pie are forever linked in my brain in ways that just do not ever watch those two things the same day for the first time each. It will scar you.
Eureka Roberto wants to know what the brand and model number of my neck mic is. I have a LG... Oh, it's the fancy one.
The 900?
The
800?
Hold on, it's like a 9. The 1100. It's the HBS 1100. And it's pretty great, except the microphone is garbage. So check this out though. Look, so it's got the little, I don't know if you can see this, little dongly guys that drop down, and so you sort of put them in your ear, and then when you want to bring them in, you go, and they just suck back up. And I'm sure that mechanism is going to break at some point, but
yeah, I have two of the predecessors to those that I basically wore one to the point that like the right earphone was falling apart. Got a second set and made the mistake of wearing it in the rain. It didn't survive that. So don't wear them in the rain.
Yeah,
but they're fabulous.
Yeah, they're fabulous. Yeah, and you can get some of the older, more inexpensive ones back. Like you should be able to get these things for about $50 on eBay and stuff. Some of the older versions of them, and I swear by them. You and I now, I think, have both been using these. I sort of think of it as my exploding Running Man collar, right? At some point, Carl, I get too far away, and Carl just presses a button, and my head pops off. So. Yeah.
What I love is there's no risk of doorknobs, dogs, or anything else tearing my headphones out of my ear.
That's exactly it. I've killed a phone, dropped them into the toilet because the cord is connected to it, and I'm listening to my podcast. These work great. And that LG, that was free. That's for you, LG. No money, and yet there they go. And you will often see me wearing them. So except. The microphone is garbage, and anyone who you try to make a phone call with goes, I can barely hear you. Why can't they make a better microphone for these things?
So I have never had that problem with mine. I think mine are 900s or 800s. So maybe the older ones have better microphones because they don't have the retractable stuff going inside.
Every version that I've had, the microphone has always been terrible. So.
Okay.
And so you can't have a good phone call. You always feel like you've got to switch to your actual phone if you really want to be heard.
I've never had that experience with mine.
You don't know. You haven't been the other person who's had to talk to you on the phone. You don't know. All right. This is boring. So if you have no idea what it is that you've stumbled into, we're about to do a live episode of Astronomy Cast. We are going to tell the terrible, sad story of larger animals in space. Dogs, monkeys, primates. Pamela may be smiling, but inside she's crying.
It's true.
Yeah, so just
this is me in absolute despair because hysterical maniacal laughter is easier than crying. Yeah. It also burns more calories.
Yeah, no. The point is that we were talking about this a little bit before the show that I tend to oversimplify what are cosmically complicated things, and Pamela has a gleeful enjoyment of destruction at a vast level, and this is just how we roll. So let us move on. All right, so we'll do the show, and then we'll stick around. We'll answer your questions about space and astronomy. Okay.
Yes.
You seem muted there for. Oh no, you're all right. Okay, so tell me.
Yes, sorry, I was muted. I am no longer.
That's fine. Tell me when you're going to press record.
There's a fish tank going, and last time I did this, Chad told me it sounded like there was a human being in the restroom the entire episode. I'm going to turn off the fish tank.
Okay. Our intro says our weekly facts-based journey through the inevitable death and destruction of the cosmos, or else just the small furry creatures in it.
Sorry, sudden realization that that was the noise I couldn't figure out.
All right.
Okay, now I'm totally ready. I'm going to press record. Are you ready to press record?
I am ready to press record.
I have pressed record.
I have also pressed record. We did it.
Go team.
Go team. Hello, Chad. Although
Hey,
Chad's going to be in
Chad.
town today, so I'm going to hang out with him. All right. Let me find my intro. Here we go. Astronomy Cast, episode 447. Animals in Space, part 3. Cats, monkeys, primates. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. My name is Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today. With me is Dr. Pamela Gay, the Director of Technology and Citizen Science at the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, and the Director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. You watch me do that intro now with bated breath.
I do.
I know,
I'm
it's
always
a complicated title. I'm an absolute professional now. I never mess this up. It's right there in my head.
I think you just cursed yourself for next week.
I totally did. So before we get on with today's episode, I want to give a huge thank you to all of the patrons that came on board. Wow. What an amazing contribution. And I've got some names that I want to say. A special thank you to. I'm not sure where we'll put this from this point forward, but
It's going to be on the website on the credits page.
But I think we're also going to say it in the show as well, but near the end. So I just want to say a big thank you to Helga Bjorkog, Bill Hamilton, Charles White, Matt Woods, Chad Cullopy, Bjart Foshaug, Greg Gutham, Joe Kuveres, Arthur Latz Hall, Frank Tippin, Clem Unger, Tracy Ann, James Poley, and Les Howard for coming in at some of the higher levels on Patreon. It means the absolute world to us. So thank you so much for joining our Patreon. If you want to join the Astronomy Cast Patreon, go to patreon.com/astronomycast. There's some really cool things in there, even office hours with Pamela. So you should go and check that out. All right, on to the show. For this final episode of our 3-part look at animals in space, we look at the largest animals to go to orbit, apart from humans, of course. And I'll just warn you now, this one's going to be a little sad. So, I said cats, monkeys, primates, and I mentioned dogs, but actually dogs are one of the big and saddest parts of this episode. So we should mention the dogs. All right.
I banished mine so he won't have to hear this episode.
Poor Eddie. Well, so when last we saw our heroes, we were sending mice and other small critters to space. But the rocket program, I guess in the early days, right? The Soviets really pioneered putting larger and larger creatures into space. Let's talk about some of the first mammal astronauts that went up to space.
Well, the first mammal, I think, was the August 31st, 1950 launch of a mouse, which was on a V2. So there were actually, I take that back. There was a 1949 launch of a Reese's monkey. So I don't know why they sent the monkey before the mouse, but they did.
Because it's kind of like a human, and let's see what happens, and who cares what happens to the monkey. Go.
Yeah. So this is at the point where we were still launching stolen Nazi spacecraft, basically. So we tried to launch Albert 1 and killed him. That was a rhesus monkey. We then tried again with Albert 2. And we were able to put a monkey into space on a V2 rocket.
So that would be on some kind of suborbital trajectory here.
Yeah,
V2.
This is suborbital. So Albert 2 made it to 83 miles up, he made it back down and he died on impact because, like so many model rockets, there was failure to deploy the parachute. And I mean, this kind of makes sense. V2s were designed to destroy things, and they retrofit the V2s to add parachutes to have slightly gentler, less explosive and damaging landings. But survival and landing is one of those things you need to kind of bake into the system from
Right.
when you start building it.
Right. They replaced the warhead with a monkey.
Yeah.
And didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about what would happen to the monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Now,
basically,
this was the Americans that did this?
this was the Americans.
Right, okay.
So the Americans launched a bunch of monkeys, and 2/3 of them died on impact due to failure to deploy a parachute.
2/3 of them. Yeah.
So it turns out that our testing of whether or not going to space would kill you succeeded in killing monkeys because we couldn't build deploying parachutes.
They hadn't even gotten to the part where to find out if they could get up into space. It was really just like, turns out crashing onto the planet
Does kill you. It really does.
Does kill you. So they figured that one out.
Yes. Over and over. And
do you know how many launches they did?
They did a lot. I haven't been able to find exact numbers tallied in one place. Just the ominous sentence, the death rate among monkeys at this stage was very high. About 2/3 of all monkeys launched in the 40s and 50s died on missions or soon after landing.
Right. Okay. And that's what the Americans were up to. What were the Soviets up to at the same time?
They were killing dogs.
They were killing dogs.
Yeah. So yeah. This is one of those episodes where we're starting to get to pointless death, which I'm not a fan of. I mean, past episodes we talked about geology killing you. There's no controlling that. It just happens.
That sounds like a pointless death, but I understand.
Well, but not.
I mean, that's from a cold and unfeeling universe. I understand that, as opposed to
a cold and unfeeling engineer.
Right, as opposed to an engineer just kind of going, I wonder what happens when you smash a monkey into the ground.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the engineers were extremely devastated. So I do want to be entirely fair that these folks were not intending to kill monkeys, dogs, and other critters this way. There was a space race going on. People were being pushed to launch them quickly, test things out in every way possible. And they didn't have time to perfect the parachutes and then figure out if space was healthy for humans. They needed to perfect both at once. So, July 22nd, 1951, Russia launched Diazik and Chirgun, which means gypsy. So gypsy and Dezik is how we've Americanized these two dogs. And they got them into space flight. They managed to recover them. But one of them actually got killed on a future launch. So they tried to relaunch a dog.
And so their first launches actually were less harmful to their animals, to their dogs.
Right. So yeah, they waited to kill one until later. And then there was Laika, who we all know about, who unfortunately died during flight.
So can you tell the story of Laika?
So Laika was in the second ever orbiting spacecraft. It was first animal friendly, happy dog, from what I understand. This was on Sputnik number 2. So they were very moving quickly with their space program. The US nicknamed this Muttnik because dog were crazy that way. And and this was one of those things where it was a let's test the technology flight. So they wired Leica up, made sure that Leica was respirating, breathing, heart rate, all that stuff was normal. But then they didn't have a way to get Leica back. And they knew this. And so they anesthetized, and by that I mean killed Leica in orbit.
Right. Well, and actually, there's a bit of a controversy about the story that originally they said that the dog died. You know, that they had no way to bring an orbital spacecraft back to Earth, and it was fully expected that when the spacecraft would re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, the dog would perish as the spacecraft came in. But in the 2000s, the Russian officials actually released a deeper explanation of what happened to Laika, and it turns out that actually she probably died from overheating from the launch itself. So that the sort of what she was in was, as they sort of went up into space, she probably overheated fairly quickly, and it wasn't, the dying from oxygen after several days that originally people had thought it was going to be. So I guess the part was that it was a cover up of a faulty deployment system, not the expected suffocation of the dog that really killed her.
At a certain point, it's a better death than the monkeys that kept dying on impact. So here's where it starts to bother me is like squirrel monkey named Gordo, cute little happy American Navy trained squirrel monkey. Launched on one of the Jupiters in 1958, and they had Gordo wired up for telemetry, and he survived 10 times the acceleration of gravity during launch. He was then weightless for 8 minutes. Happy little Gordo, enjoying his weightlessness, couldn't actually move. They bundled them up. They were basically swaddled monkeys.
Yes.
And then during landing, and I use that term loosely yet again, he survived 40 times gravity while re-entering at 10,000 miles per hour because the parachute didn't deploy again.
But survived some of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Survived. The 10G launch, 8 minutes of weightlessness, and hit 40 Gs before kaplooey.
Yeah. What came next?
Well, here we finally have things that survived mostly. We have the monkeys, Abel and Miss Baker. These were the first monkeys to survive for a period of time. And they again launched on a Jupiter. These were American-born rhesus monkeys. What I find interesting is Abel came from Independence, Kansas, while Miss Baker, a squirrel monkey, came from Peru. So we had an immigrant monkey flying with an American-born monkey. And everything went well. They went into orbit. They came back. Unfortunately, poor Abel got an infection from his medical electrodes.
Oh, no.
And sorry, my phone's ringing. Okay, turning it off. So let me go back.
Yep.
So poor Abel, he got an infection from his medical probes, and they lost him. He died. Now, Miss Baker, she then went on to become a museum occupant. So she survived and then got behind glass with a sign that said "Do not tap," and was tapped at for decades to come. And she died in the 1980s.
Right. And I know that they had attempted, this was sort of, because you had a mammal, a primate that had gone to space and returned, they tried mating her with other monkeys to see what would happen? Would that be successful? And I believe it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So she got to live a very happy little squirrel monkey life in a very happy little place in the Huntsville Space and Rocket Center. So things got going a little bit better. Um, and it was one of these things where we just kept launching things. America kept launching monkeys. Russia kept launching dogs. 59, we had two more dogs, a rabbit in space.
Yeah. Marfusa, the first
Yes,
rabbit.
yes.
Which is
And again, all they're doing with this is testing, do things survive and come back?
yes. Not can they
So
thrive into a strong extraplanetary colony of space dogs and space rabbits, but just can they go up, breathe, come back down?
and it started to get kind of ridiculous. In 1960 on Sputnik 5, there was um, the partridge in a pear tree launch, essentially. It carried two dogs, Belka and Strelka, a gray rabbit, 40 mice, two rats, and 15 flasks of fruit flies. Also some plants. And so they just kept launching things to see if they could return them alive. They were able with Sputnik 5 to bring everything back alive. They even bred the dogs, giving one of the puppies to Carolyn Kennedy. So
And you
so
can still get a descendant to this
you
day.
can.
Yeah.
You can. These are things you can do.
I actually, on a completely separate note, I have space tomatoes.
Yes, from the 80s.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
And so
remember
there was
that.
tomatoes that went to space, and they brought them back down. They brought the seeds back down, and then bred them, and then you can actually just grow space tomatoes, and they are directly connected to tomatoes that have been to space on board the space shuttle.
Yeah, that was a big program for a lot of elementary schools.
Yeah. So every year I grow space tomatoes.
But that at least has like a whole lot of scientific outcomes of yes, tomatoes can survive outer space.
Turns out, yeah.
What gets me is each nation like chose a different critter to focus on. So France decided to get into the game in 1963 and started launching cats.
Yeah.
So we had cats, we had France launched the cat Felicita. I don't speak French. I have no clue which of these letters should be silent. This is what happens when you learn from books rather than
Félicette.
from talking. Okay. Félicette. And that was on a sounding rocket. And there were several more cats to follow. Um, they did end up killing one due to delay in recovering the capsule, which is another sad and unfortunate way to die. Um, but but all of these were towards the point of proving um, things don't die simply from going to space; they die from engineering failures. So we successfully proved a whole lot of yes, life will initially live when sent into outer
If
space.
done right.
Yes.
Right? So if you get the launch safe, you make it up to orbit, you detach from your stages, you orbit the Earth, you return to the atmosphere, your parachute deploys, and your capsule is recovered, then the inhabitants are probably alive and fine. And if you
Yes.
mess up any of those pieces, then you get deaths
Yes.
in both animal form and human form.
Yes. So having essentially gone through and proven if you launch things and you don't crash them back into the earth, they will probably live. The question started to become one of, okay, can we launch things into space and then have them actually think and interact and do things? Because astronauts need to be able to do things. So this is where we started going with chimpanzees, because
Right.
chimpanzees you can train. And these were very young chimpanzees that they were sending up simply because chimpanzees, when they're young, are they're easier to work with. And so there were 3-year-olds that were trained. One of them came to be known as Ham. This stands for the Holloman Aerospace Medical Center
I
at
didn't know
Holloman Air
that.
Force. Yep,
I thought it was just
yep.
his name was Ham, but I didn't know that
No,
it actually he was an acronym.
he was another immigrant animal. He was born in Cameroon. He was caught by animal trackers and actually taken to a rare bird farm in Miami, Florida, where he was purchased by the Air Force. So the Air Force buys their chimps essentially out of the pet trade, and or at least they did in the 50s. And Ham was trained to pull levers, to do all sorts of different tasks. And if he did them correctly, he got a banana treat. If he did them incorrectly, he got zotted with electricity. Yeah,
Yeah.
the stakes were high for Ham. So yeah, they launched him. He came back. He survived, and he actually got to go on and live in the National Zoo for many, many years.
And I think the part that's really interesting with this, right, is that scientists, engineers had no idea if the human body would function. Like they had gotten to the point now where they knew that if you were in a rocket, an animal seems to go up to space and return, but like, would you be doing anything but being in terrible racking pain for that entire duration? And it turns out, and so this is why you taught this chimp to pull levers to get his tasty banana tree, was that he was pulling levers for the duration of his space flight, getting banana treats, pulling levers, to show that a human being, for example, an Alan Shepard, would have to pull levers and try to function while they were going through space.
And so here we finally start to get to some of the more happy stories of Ham launched. He essentially got rescued from the pet trade by the Air Force, put through intensive training, sent into space where he pulled things and pushed things and didn't get zotted by electricity. And then he came back and he got to live with a happy other colony of chimps. And he was in the National Zoo for a while, and he got to live a happy socialized chimp life. Now, when he passed away, they did dissect him. They wanted to study essentially what happened. Were there any noticeable differences to his anatomy? And they initially had the bad idea that they were then going to taxidermy his fur and put him in the Smithsonian. Luckily, the public said no.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that
And
either.
and one of the more creepy factoids I've now learned is they buried all of him except for the bones. And I now want to know where his bones are. They buried all of him except for his bones at the Astronaut Hall of Fame in New Mexico.
How did, why would he not have his bones?
I'm assuming that they were used for science.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Now, was Ham the sort of first and last chimp that was used in
No,
spaceflight?
no. So he was followed on by other chimps. Enos, the chimpanzee, was perhaps one of the um, best additional well-known ones. He was the second chimpanzee launched by NASA, and he got to go all the way around the planet. So he achieved orbit. He was actually the third hominid to achieve orbit, because you had um,
Like Yuri
you
Gagarin
had
and then John
yeah.
Glenn and then
Well,
this chimp.
no, it wasn't John Glenn. It was Yuri Gagarin. And the pause was, how do you pronounce that first name? I'm sorry, folks. This is one of those episodes where you learn I read more than I speak. It was Yuri Gagarin and Herman Tetov. So there were two Soviets and then Enos that orbited the Earth.
Right.
And so Happy Little Enos was again also acquired from the Miami Rare Bird Farm. And he went through hours and hours and hours of training at the University of Kentucky and also at Holman Air Force Base. And he got to orbit twice. He was supposed to orbit 3 times, except the capsule was overheating, and luckily they decided not to kill him. Um, so, um, yeah,
That was thoughtful.
so yeah, and so they brought him back, and so basically he was the dress rehearsal for John Glenn. So they sent up Enos, and he did his thing in the Mercury capsule, and then he came back. So Mercury Atlas 5, have monkey will travel, or in this case, have ape will travel.
Little known fact: John Glenn also did astronauting for banana treats.
Really?
No, not really.
Okay. For
And
all I
and to
knew,
and to avoid electrical shocks.
for all I knew, they had freeze dried ice cream and banana
In
treats.
banana
I was
treats, yeah.
willing to go with that. Um, so unfortunately, Enos didn't live as long as Ham because he caught dysentery. So it was a few months after he returned to Earth, he got quite sick and passed away. And Yeah, so his body bits were unfortunately discarded.
So, I mean, I think that at this point we've got like other uh, some more Russian dogs coming out of the Soviets, and you've got various experiments. I know there's some tortoises were sent to space. The U.S. sent another monkey to space, but sort of the heyday of these animals was really during the 50s and the 60s, as they were moving through this, what happens to the human body, what happens to the mammalian body when it goes to space, to orbit for short and longer periods of time. And then I guess once they had solved that and gotten humans to go into space and saw that they could come back safely, the need to send them on these kinds of missions wrapped up. Now you had, the the biggest monkey of all,
The
right? The
human.
human. So, but it's
Yeah.
it's it's a pretty sad period, I think, when you think about what happened to some of those animals, and just what a freak out it must have been for them, the kinds of forces involved, the temperatures, the weightlessness.
My dog gets confused by elevators.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, so imagine an elevator that falls so quickly he floats in microgravity. I, are they still testing animals, or is that period sort of over now?
Well, the testing animals insofar as can you eat, drink, respirate, digest, those basics, that they figured out. And nowadays, when we're testing rockets, well, apparently if you're SpaceX, you test them with cheese.
Yes.
So um the need to launch science research animals in order to test the basics has been relieved. And like so much scientific research, it turns out that for animal studies, we don't need to use primates. We don't need to use dogs. I'm not sure we ever really need to use cats. Cats aren't very good research subjects quite often.
I mean, it does answer that age old question of, like, if a cat is weightless, which way does it fall, right?
And there's some fabulous YouTube video of that was taken on the Vomit Comet, where they start out at normal gravities. They're just picking up cats and dropping them and watching them land on their paws, and they keep doing this in a steady rhythm. And as they hit microgravity, the cats are like, "Oh dear!" You hear cats' expletive essentially through body language.
Yeah.
Um, so you can do things like that on the Vomit Comet, which is there's a variety of different aircraft they use. I think the C-180 is one of the ones they use, but I could be wrong. That wasn't prep for this episode. They can use aircraft on parabolic orbits that allow people to experience microgravity while the aircraft is in free fall. And so they do that with various will this kill them types of simple questions. But the animal models that they need for many other things, the questions of skin, the questions of bone, the questions of immune system, you can start to do with much simpler animals. The fruit fly has over 70 genetic components in common with human beings. So at that level, fruit flies, I'm not sure anyone uh, in a science lab has truly mourned the death of a single fruit fly. But we do get attached to our monkeys, our cats, our dogs, our tortoises. And so it's better to use the fruit flies when you can and save the higher life forms for more complex problems.
Yeah. All right, well, this wraps up our 3-part series on animals in space, the saddest episode. And next week, I don't know what we'll talk about. We're back to a blank slate. I got
We
some
we
ideas.
we sent one idea last week to Susie, and I'm sure she'll remind us of what it was.
Right, because we don't. All right, thanks, Pamela.
Thank you very much.
All right, save.
This is the stage where I always find myself staring slightly open-mouthed at the computer, trying to remember what number we're on.
447.
Yep, I got there. It just required staring slightly open-mouthed. I'm not sure why the open mouth helps, but it seems to. So pardon us while we say, folks, we know this is the boring part of the episode, especially to those of you who are listening to our new raw feed.
Yes.
And we love you out there listening to our new raw feed. But this also means you get to hear all the mistakes, all the dead air.
Yeah. Well, so Chad has recorded a new outro for Astronomy Cast that mentions that people go to the raw feed.
Okay.
So I have a challenge for you, listener. If you're listening to this on the raw feed, why? Let us know. Drop us an email. info@astronomycast.com. Was it worth it to hear all of the back and forth chatter to know
with the lower quality audio stripped from YouTube?
Yeah. Oh, we don't have to fix that, do we? No.
We like ourselves. We like you. We like you too, audience, but we can only ask Chad to do so much.
Well, I mean, I personally, I deeply appreciate all of the people who are watching the show live because it brings, we're getting a chance to play for an audience and being able to interact with you and answer your questions. And I love that. But I know that for me, there's very few shows that I have the time and wherewithal to show up for every week and actually just, watch it live and interact with the creators. So this is exactly what I would do were I a person who was listening to a podcast. I would be like, where is the podcast version of this thing that you do? I demand an RSS feed to get these sounds into my brain. So I understand. That's the only way that I would. That's the only way it could roll for me. Okay, great. I'm uploading my episode. That's for you, Chad.
Yay.
Cool. All right, let's get on with the stuff that's happening this week. Come on. Questions. Hit us up. Questions. I'm ready. Okay, Caleb asked, how do we know that the right monkey came back? Might have been one sent out from the Planet of the Apes. Good point. That would be the moment that the Planet of the Apes would send one of their people, and you don't want to have that chat in the chat. Anyway, the Planet of the Apes would send one of their apes to us, and we wouldn't even know because we can't really You know what I mean? That's the way they would do it. I think that makes sense. Tony Raggett wants to know, is this about the large animals going to space? Is anyone going to mention about the sperm whale and the bowl of petunias?
Oh, I have so much sympathy with the bowl of petunias.
We are only talking about animals that human beings have sent to space, not animals
The
and
improbability,
yeah,
spontaneous
we're not
origination.
exactly. We're not talking about animals and flowers that are created by quantum unpredictability. That is not part of our purview.
I still have great sympathy for the bowl of petunias.
Um, Now you've got to. I know you don't have very much time. When can you go till?
Uh, 10 minutes more?
Sure, no problem.
4:30?
Yep, no problem.
Okay.
That's sort of the normal time, but Michael Meyer says I expect SpaceX will do the whale and petunias. They could at least paint it on the side of the rocket, right?
But they need to have transparent aluminum first.
Right. Malcolm Bond wants to know, when is the next big asteroid coming to Earth?
When they just decide to find it, because usually they don't get a lot of warning on these things.
Yes. John Drake wants to know, what episode did you have your hair up like Princess Leia? Did that happen? That's totally
I've had headphones.
Yeah, but is that?
I've had headphones like
But you've
that.
never had your hair up like Princess Leia. That is a thing that you would do too. So it's weird that I can't remember a time that you've done that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I could do the cross Brady thing. I've done that before, but I don't think I've done that on air. The Ewok Princess Leia. My hair does that.
Right. Elette Averin wants to know, how come they've never set up any pets or animal co-pilots to permanent cohabitation on the ISS? That's a great question. Like, they should have a pet. Some kind of, like, some animal that is...
They have a drawer of mice already.
That's it. That's all they need.
Like, they literally have a
Right.
drawer of mice.
Or like some kind of robot, I think. Just like
Yeah.
if you brought like a house cat or a dog up there, I mean, one, it would just be like pooping everywhere. That would be gross.
And shedding. Oh, dear
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
shedding.
Like a dog just like peeing in your space station. No, thank you. So like some kind of robot one. Like, what about one of those like Sony Aibo dogs, and just like have it float around barking at you? Or like one of those robots, like have like the General Dynamics send up one of their robots. Like, on the one hand, they could test out how horrific those robots will be in space, but also, a companion, a faithful
They do
companion.
have Robonaut. They do have their Robonaut faithful companion.
But isn't he like bolted on the outside of the station, and then they can?
I don't remember
and
if
every
he's
now
on the
and-
inside or the
He's
outside.
designed to go on the end of the Canadarm, and then
We
just-
need to do an episode on Robonaut.
do we really? Huh? Okay.
Because I don't know anything about him, and this is how I learn things.
That's true. But there was also this little like floating ball that was going to zip around inside the space station, and that's what you want, right? It was like a little ball that would fly around.
I know
and
nothing about this.
It could, I think it did little puffs of air. It could like move itself around. And so you could imagine, right, this little microgravity robot, and then like give it some kind of intelligent persona as it's flying around, yakking at you while you're an astronaut in the space station, and it's giving you like witty banter while you're attempting to fix the jargonator that's broken. So,
I'm starting to believe that a true Turing test includes sarcasm, and until AIs have developed appropriate use of sarcasm and metaphor.
yeah, that was in Interstellar. Do you remember the ITARS robot?
Yes.
Yeah, and you
yes.
could set the level of sarcasm,
Yes.
which I think is something that we wish we could do with human beings around us.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we also need a sarcasm punctuation, but that's a different podcast altogether.
What? Sorry, I don't understand.
Sarcasm punctuation, so that when you're typing to somebody, they know if you're being sarcastic
Isn't that a
or not.
smiley? Is that an emoticon?
Well, that's what's ended up happening.
Right, like a poop emoji, right? Like if you want to...
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that language has been fully developed. Right?
There was a movement for a while to have like comma, semicolon, colon, exclamation mark, sarcasm mark. But
No, we're way beyond that with emojis
okay,
now. Because I mean,
okay.
I can give you a little thumbs up. I can send you a text and go thumbs up, thumbs up.
I'm waiting for the New York Times to start including that in their normal everyday text.
Ooh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Imagine, okay, so novelists out there, Chuck Wendig, John Scalzi, someone get a hold of them. We want to see a novel written with emojis as part of the language of the novel.
I don't know if I'm sure this has been done. Let's see. Cole Morgan has asked an actual proper question, which is that would rotating spacecraft need some sort of ballast or counterweight to balance people moving around on board? Ooh, good question. Right. Okay. So I understand what he's getting at, right? So you've got like this big rotating wheel,
Mm-hmm.
whatever's the size, you set it spinning, and therefore you've got artificial gravity inside of it. But it's going to be rotating. It's going to be like a nicely balanced wheel, but you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have people moving around, and they say may bunch up on one part and have a party. Is that going to cause some kind of instability on the wheel because you've got all these people?
So in general, weight of human would be significantly less than weight of spacecraft and can be generally, but not entirely, negated or neglected in calculations. Now, the catch is you would need to have rules like thou shalt not all have a party in section C. You can only have so many people in so many bunched up locations. So it starts to get rather totalitarian. You shall have no gatherings of groups greater than four.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's like when you get in an
um,
airplane and they're like, "Okay, everybody, you people all need to move to the other side of the
yeah,
aircraft, and you people
yeah.
are overbooked and need to get off this airplane." But that's a separate conversation. Um, and then the other question was any news. Hold on, this disappeared. Okay, Ren in Brazil wants to know any news on the inflatable Bigelow modules on the space station. I don't know. They've attached a Bigelow inflatable module to the space station.
They
Uh,
haven't let people in it. I know that.
Let me just look it up here. I think
We should do episodes on these things. These are the things that have changed since we first did episodes on them.
it's inflatable habitats. Susie,
Yes. Add it to the
add it to
list.
the list.
We love you, Susie. We really honestly do.
Well, yeah, and by participating on the Patreon, you too will show Susie and Chad how much you appreciate their help.
It's true. This is, and you also make our server happy. So please feed the server,
Feed the server,
feed Susie, feed
Susie and
Chad.
Chad. Yeah, yeah. I mean, just to be clear, Pamela and I do not take a salary from Astronomy Cast. It is just the team. Um. Okay, Caleb wants to know, could you please explain how the astronauts lose or gain time when they're up in space, but in as simplistic a way as possible so I can understand?
So the passage of time for an astronaut is such that for every, I'm going to just make up numbers. These are not accurate numbers. So, for say every 1,000 seconds on the planet Earth, they might experience exaggerated numbers here, folks 998 seconds in space. That is not accurate. It's actually not that big a difference. Um, so, the reason that time appears to pass more slowly, so you end up with the astronauts aging more slowly at a minuscule, not noticeable amount unless you're in an atomic clock. The reason for this is relativity. We did an entire episode on this where we actually, I think, did it pretty well. But what it boils down to is everyone always sees the speed of light as passing at the exact same rate. And because of the difference in where they are in the gravity well, and the difference in how they're moving and all of these other factors, the astronauts, in order to see in order to see light passing at the same rate that we see light passing at, time has to move more slowly for them.
Right. And the faster that you move, the more there is a slower passing of time. But at the same time, by being in the gravity well closer to the Earth, you experience a different time dilation as well. And that, in fact, those two time dilations are in battle with each other. So that because you're on the surface of the Earth, you are experiencing slower time. No, sorry, faster time than someone who is high up in space, 50 nautical miles away from the surface of the Earth, and at the same time, because they're moving faster, and there actually is, and I keep meaning to find this number because it comes up all the time, and I need to find the number, the exact balance point that if you're in orbit, the two time dilation effects balance out. One last question, and then we got a book. Rinstro wants to know, what is your favorite theory / explanation for the difference in the number of craters on the near and far sides of the moon?
I kind of like the basically it was a later impact on the backside.
The, I like,
But it's strictly pleasing to me. It's not any scientific reason.
well, I mean, but one of the big theories is that the moon ate its brother. That the moon
Yeah.
that there was a second moon, and those moons collided and caused the one side of the moon to be with the mare that we see, and the other side of the moon to just be heavily cratered, and that is the only piece of information we'll ever have that we had a second moon.
Unless
Goodbye.
we do all sorts of complicated geological sampling, which
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're
Yeah.
going to get to.
All right, let us wrap things up. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this week. Thanks, Pamela, for bringing the brain. If you haven't already, subscribe, comment, do all the things. Don't forget, next week, we're going to have all kinds of super fun stuff happening over on Twitch. So I'm F. Cain on Twitch. Do you have a Twitch account?
Yeah, I'm Star Strider.
There we go. And I don't think we even have an Astronomy Cast on Twitch, which we'll have to figure out. It's another thing. Anyway, yay. Thanks, everybody.
Yay.
And we will see you all next week.
Sounds great. See you all later.
Stop the stream.